Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I am Christiana Amodu Otinya. And on this program, we'll bring you information to your screen accurately analyzing trends and developments in Nigeria's economic space with seasoned experts and equally preferring workable solutions to propelling the Nigerian economy on a path of economic prosperity. On today's edition of the program, we are focusing on the petroleum sector. Now, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mele Kyari, disclosed during the weekly ministerial media briefing that Nigeria intends to end fuel importation by mid-2023, while also lamenting the phenomenon of oil theft bedeviling the society. Now, conversely, Nigeria has spent humongous sum on fuel subsidies, and there have been calls for these to be scrapped and monies invested in other social sectors. I will be joined by Engineer Shadrach Ogiriki. He is the acting head of Department Petroleum and Gas Engineering at Bayes University, and he's also an Africa Development Scholar, the National Technical Secretary of the Nigerian Institution of Petroleum Engineers. So he will be speaking to issues and development in the Nigerian oil and gas sector. Now, there have been issues that have also been raised around data, talking about the data that have come out from the Nigerian oil and gas sector. Data as relates to theft. We saw the Chief of Naval Staff and also the head of the NNPCL also speaking to issues around how much are we losing, what's the number of barrels Nigeria is losing to oil theft. Now, he will be putting perspective to some of this issue, and a lot of experts and economic watchers have said, how is Nigeria going to come out from the resource curse? Now, I'm talking about how there's basically bonanza in the oil sector. Oil prices just before I came into the studio was at $95 per barrel. The OPEC Plus is also supposed to meet this week to talk about the outlook for the oil market. Are we going to see the de facto leader of OPEC, that's talking about Saudi Arabia, and also generally the bloc cutting shortfall of supplies? Or are we going to see that there's going to be a change of stance from the meeting? We'll look onto all of that during the conversation segment of the program today. I'll hold my fire here, take a short break. When I come back, the conversation will commence. Please stay. Welcome back, and thank you for still staying with us there on the program. This is Business Daily. My guest is with me now in the studio. Like I stated earlier on, he is Engineer Shadrach Ogiriki, the acting head of department at Bayes University of Petroleum and Gas Engineering Department. He will be speaking some of the issues in the oil sector. Let's take a look at some of the key highlights from the briefing from the head of the NNPCL. The boss of the NNPCL spoke to issues around the sector. Now, he said Nigeria will no longer import refined petroleum products from mid-2023. The sector is going to improve after the completion of ongoing maintenance of the nation's refineries and the almost completed Dangote platform. The federal government lamented the phenomenon of oil theft bedeviling the society. Now, the head of the NNPCL fingered churches, mosques, among others, serving as tapping points of oil thieves. Total production from the national refineries, which are currently being refurbished and will be ready next year. Now, products from the Dangote Refinery would be able to meet domestic needs without any need for importation from mid-2023. The NNPC owns 20% equity in the Dangote Refinery and the first right of refusal to supply crude oil to that plant. Now, Nigeria has locked down the ability to sell crude oil for 330,000 barrels minimum right for the next 20 years. That's according to the boss of the NNPCL. End-to-end pipeline monitoring would require private entities as well as other community stakeholders' involvement. He also said that sometime last week, NNPC management is building the National Reserve Company. 295 illegal connections were discovered in one line in less than 200 meters. That's talking about the issue of vandalism, that's vandalizing pipelines in Nigeria. 739 ovens for the illegal crude oil theft have been discovered and some destroyed. 344 reservoirs were created and 355 cooking ports were also discovered. So all of this now are harming the nation's economy and the nation's oil and gas sector. And I know that's a sector that you closely follow and a sector that you closely monitor. I want you to speak to some of the issues that I have mentioned before we begin to break them down.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here. Good day, Nigerians. To begin with, issue of vandalism and oil theft, it is quite regrettable. And what many Nigerians do not know is that it is not only affecting our economy, but also our immediate environment, particularly the host communities. If you go to such an environment, you will find it less habitable for such people. I remember a time I was in Port Harcourt, just spent 1 week there. I ended up coming down with cough and a running nose because of the black soot there. It was very severe. So such a thing is not what we should be encouraging in our country. The NNPC boss has stated a lot that Nigeria will end deportation by mid-2023. I believe by then the Dangote Refinery would have come upstream, and like he promised, the Nigerian refineries as well will also come upstream. If that be the case, then there's light at the end of the tunnel. Then he mentioned about religious organizations being involved in oil theft. It is quite appalling, and it's something we should all come together, every member of society, to tackle. Because like I said, it is not only harming our society, but our environment as well. So I think it is what all stakeholders, all Nigerians should come together and stop this menace.
Let's speak to the issue of Nigeria no longer importing refined petroleum products from mid-2023. Now, some have said that's a tall order, although this is not the first time we are hearing that we are going to stop importing refined products. But for this to end, we need to ensure that we have structures, infrastructure in the sector that will work to help support this claim. Now, I want to speak to the Dangote Refinery. Now, we've heard that refinery is supposed to save the sector, so to speak. It's supposed to be like a big brother or a savior to come and create a change, basically, in the oil and gas sector. Do you think, are you really hopeful that if the Dangote Refinery commences, we are going to see a drastic change in the scheme of things?
Yes, I believe so, for two reasons, or should I start with two reasons? First, if the Dangote establishment or the group will be willing to ship out their product to Nigerians first before exporting the excess, that would be a big gain for Nigeria. Then secondly, apart from the petroleum, we having our product refined locally, the petroleum sector, like I've heard, gobs about 40% of our forex, the demand on dollar. So if we have our local products done here for us, therefore the demand on dollar will be eased by about 40%. So this fluctuation of dollar naira exchange will be less. So like I said, if the Dangote Refinery will be willing to ship out their product to Nigeria, because they might be tempted to export where they can get their foreign currency, you never can tell. But good enough, the NNPC have acquired 20% stake. I think that will play a good role in influencing their decision.
Okay, I want to still speak with the issues around what's happening in the sector, and I want you to speak to oil theft. Okay. Now, this I think at this point it's almost like a plague that has bedeviled the sector for some time, and we have had conflicting data with regards to how much we are really losing to oil theft. The NNPC boss says this, the Chief of Naval Staff come forth and says this, and even the boss of the customs did come out to say sometime during the week, he argued that the NNPCL cannot scientifically prove that 98 million liters per day that the country consumes. He said now they cannot prove that we consume 98 million liters per day. And he's also arguing to some of the data that has been raised, 60 million barrels per day, 38 million barrels per day. And these numbers are being brandished. And really, to the ordinary Nigerian going about their duties, they just want to understand, how can we bring an end to this menace? There were also concerns raised about the government hiring an ex-militant to help control this issue, although the NNPC boss said that they do not have any direct relations with the ex-militant. They are only working with a company that they feel the ex-militant has some kind of interest in. Okay. How can we curb oil theft?
Okay, to start with, the varying figures we are having is quite disappointing. I think we should have a system that should define what is really happening, quantify the oil theft, and of course, spot out your locations or the risk. Just do a comprehensive risk analysis and give us precise figure so we can work with. I will agree with the Controller General of Customs, Colonel yes, Hamid Ali retired. He did fault the figures of NNPC, and I still don't know why NNPC is yet to respond to that. He did question that NNPC cannot really justify the 98 million liters they import, that Nigeria consumes 60 million liters daily. Now, maybe NNPC can tell us the excess of the 60 million is just like a reserve. Maybe who knows, but they should come out and respond to that. Because I believe customs should be in a good place to tell us what the importation of what they call the PMS or petroleum product, because they do the checking at the border or at the point of entry, so they should have a good statistics for that. So NNPC should come and respond to that. We are waiting. I'm not trying to say the Controller General boss is right or NNPC is wrong, but NNPC should respond to that. Then with respect to the oil theft again, getting an ex-militant involved, like I said, all stakeholders need to be involved in this. Now, recently I watched him on video when he had a meeting with some traditional rulers in the Niger Delta. Yes. That is the way to go. If he can play a key role, what we need is this oil theft to be stopped. We shouldn't look for the black sheep or anybody to point accusing fingers who is trying to help. If he can help and ensure that this menace is stopped, then we should bring him on board. Not just him, every other Nigerian. Whether ex-militant or indigenes, we are all Nigerians, and this is our own stake. We all have stake in it. So everybody should be brought on board to stop this menace. Okay.
Which is very important, because if all hands are on deck, we would see a solution-driven sector, whereby we see that solutions are beginning to come forth. And like you have said, if the sector works, it's going to really benefit all across board. I want to take you back to the issue of the host communities, like you mentioned earlier on. Now, what are your thoughts on energy transition? Because you have spoken about the fact that we are seeing these hurt the host communities. What are your thoughts on energy transition, especially because we know these exploration activities is affecting host communities and affecting our environment?
Yes. Energy transition is trending these days, and I think because of the energy or the global menace this carbon emission has caused. But one thing, my own personal opinion is that the transition should be done at our own pace. We shouldn't just follow the Western world because they are doing it, we should go with them. No, they are developed, they have more technology than us, and if we follow them at their own pace, we'll end up importing the same product that we have locally. So I think it's something we should go gradually. Okay. Then the transition with the host communities, rather, we have a PIA which has brought the host on board.
There's a fund for them.
Yes. Of course, they have some monetary value for them, which is good. I can't wait to see them kickstart such a process. The host communities should have their own their own group, which will interface with the government and, of course, the oil producers. So I think with such a synergy, everything will be smooth. And, of course, this oil theft of a thing will also reduce, or if not stop totally.
Okay, because why I'm talking about the host communities issue is because this is where we get this oil from, and it is pertinent that these people are protected. Yes. And we've seen videos on social media, we've even seen investigative reports by my colleagues talking about the level of degradation that these communities are suffering. Some of them cannot even get fish, which is a source of livelihood in those places. We have a fund under the PIA for them. Do you think this will really help tackle the situation? Because then again, some people have said that will not go a long way. PANDEF has come out to speak that will not go a long way in help to assuage the challenges that these communities have faced. Do you think that will help, or that's just a good starting step?
Yeah, I think the right word is a good starting step. It will help in a way that at least it will alleviate their challenges, at least for the temporary period. And of course, if it is well managed, because the fear most of these host communities will have is who's going to manage it, who will be in charge, and how will it be used for them. For the host communities, what I would charge them to do is to also to request for accountability. Whoever is made in charge of that, they should keep monitoring, keep asking for accountability.
Accountability now from their home front and not from the government, I guess.
From us, like I said, it should be a tripartite arrangement, the host community, the government, and the oil producers.
Okay.
So accountability should be given by all involved. The host community, if there are funds given to them directly, they should be able to account for it. The government should account for the money generated from the production, while the producers should also give precise account of their production value, so from where they can get the 3%. So it should be a tripartite management.
Okay, so demanding accountability from all the stakeholders will help tackle that, because like you have stated, it is important to address host communities issues, because just by the way, if that is addressed, probably we'll see a reduction in issues around vandalism, oil theft, and pipeline challenges.
If I may come in
Go
again,
ahead, please.
With respect to the vandalism and host communities, I think because one of the reasons, I'm not speaking for them, but one of the reasons that we have this increase is that most of them in that area, their livelihood have been destroyed, if not slowed down. And where you have, most of them, if you go to such an environment, typically, their livelihood is mainly from farming, fishing, and cultivation. And when you have such an environment damaged, they can't go back to their livelihood. They resort to other means. And if the means being vandalism, which is very wrong, I must say, it is closer to them. It is easier for them, so they resort to that. So if there's a way, if there are easy ways to alleviate their challenges, it will help them to take their eyes off such activities and then focus on a better livelihood. Of course, they know it is affecting the environment, but they will still want to survive by any means needed for them, which I would also condemn totally.
Now, I want you to speak to the twin problem. I was reading a Bloomberg report, and they addressed that Nigerian oil sector is facing a twin problem. Twin problem being low production volume on one hand and operating cost on the other hand. Now, as in Saudi Arabia, we know that the Saudi Aramco, they are doing so well. They are like the poster for oil sector revolution. Now, in Saudi Arabia, we know production costs about $4 to $5. But down here in Nigeria, we are producing, our production cost is put between $15 to $17. And that's really hampering the level of development we expect to see from the oil sector. Now, the sector contracted again, according to the GDP report from the National Bureau of Statistics. I want you to speak to how we can address these issues, because if we have the issue with high operating cost on one hand and low production volume on the other hand, how can we create a kind of solution to tackle this where we would then benefit maximally from the sector? Okay.
To reduce the production cost, there are two things that should be involved. One is the technology. Now, most of the technology we are using are still being imported. Most of the technology we are using. So good enough, the government has an agency that is trying to develop local technology via the NCDMB, Local Content Development Program. So if we can invest more in our local content development, it will definitely help in reducing costs. Secondly, the second one is the political aspect, where you have the host community and the government, of course. So if you have a friendly environment, you are working very well with your neighbors, things will be easier for you. But when you have a hostile environment with all this vandalism, of course, the cost will shoot up. So we need to work on those two areas, technology and the political aspect, which particularly is on the immediate environment, the host community and all that. So most facilities where you see the environment, the neighbors or the host communities are very friendly. Most of the producers don't have any issue. Not to say it makes it cheaper, but of course it definitely helps them to avoid the high cost of maintenance and repair and all that. So that eases that. And then I will hamper on the local content, which is unfortunate for Nigeria, because most of the technology we use, we go and import them. Practically, most of the equipment we use, we import. So we see Nigerian companies partnering with foreign companies. Some of them are even portfolio companies. It is quite sad. But if we can develop this technology, and that is why I will demand that we put in more effort, not just the government, but the E&P, the exploration and production companies should put in more effort in research in Nigeria. Some of them domicile their research overseas, Europe, even in the Middle East.
Is it possible to have like a law backup whereby if they want to do that kind of research work, they do it locally? Is it possible to have such an enforcement coming?
It is possible. I don't know if anyone exists, but it's possible. It can be done. Of course, the NCDMB Act mandates that there are percentage that any job must have locally. I think some of them up to 70%. That is a big progress because it has reduced the bringing in expatriates to do some jobs. And again, it mandates you to the extent that if you don't find any Nigerian that can do the job, you get a foreign company, you must assign Nigerians to understudy such job. So with time, you phase out such process. Nigerians are handling it good. So which is a good development. So that law has really helped. So if we have such laws as well that will mandate such companies conducting any research that has to do with Nigerian assets should be done locally, better. It will definitely help.
I want you to speak to refining.
Okay.
Now, there was a whole lot of uproar that followed the humongous amounts the government is spending on the Harcourt Refinery, and we saw analysis upon analysis follow that announcement when it comes out. And we had modular refineries at some point, and we see pockets of refining going on in these host communities. Now, tell me how we can ensure that the issues around refining is sorted, because some modular refineries, we get to see videos, they are really dangerous.
Very, very.
They are very, very dangerous, especially the ones that are illegal. And this happened in some of those host communities. How can we plug these holes?
First, like you said, most of those illegal refineries are very, very dangerous. The method they use is very, very crude, which endangers not just the people that are running it, but the environment. And so I hear some people in some quarters calling for Nigerian government to look for a way and take up the modular refinery to solve our local demand problem. There's no way how do you legalize criminality? It is kind of funny when people say that. The only way how to end criminality is to just stop it totally. So with respect to the Port Harcourt refinery and the humongous amount being spent, to me, if the expenditure can be justified, then there's no problem. If just justify it, like I said, accountability should be the key word. That we are putting in XYZ amount of dollars. Now, by so time, which is the time for the refinery to come upstream, is it running? What capacity? So for you to justify it, justify the amount you have put in. So I'm all about getting things back to normal, because you can't just have a big facility and then you're importing, doing crude exchange. What they call you are selling your crude just to get one or two products, which your crude can give you hundreds of products. It is quite funny that we find ourselves in this state. And this is something we should try to end as soon as we can.
Now, time is really not our friend when we are having conversations like this. And the sector is very big and very wide. And the conversation, of course, will continue to be ongoing. Fuel subsidy. Now, whenever the issue of fuel subsidy is mentioned, there's a whole lot of mixed reactions actually trail that. Now, one part have said, end it. Let it be ended once and for all. Let it be scrapped once and for all. And invest these trillions of nairas into social sectors. We have the health sector. We have the education sector, which is your turf. Yes. Invest these monies in these sectors. Basically make the cost of living or the living standards in the country become better. In this money you are churning into subsidizing the product. Another part says allow the market determine the price that this is going to be sold. But we have a population that inflation has eroded the purchasing power. So if you say we are going to totally remove fuel subsidy and the price of fuel shoots up, what then is the fate of someone who is trying to make ends meet? I want you to categorically tell me, are you for or against the argument? Should we end fuel subsidy?
Categorically speaking, like you demanded, I am for ending of fuel subsidy. Fuel subsidy, it is not just to say that it's beneficial to few Nigerians, because if you have only one car, compare that to someone that has 10 cars, he is getting more than you. So most of the average Nigerians are even benefiting less if they care to know, because how much they spend on transportation, maybe 500 a day, but the man spending hundreds of thousands a day is getting more. Then secondly, from the statistics put out by the Minister of Finance, you have two plans for fuel subsidy removal, to phase out fuel subsidy. Plan A is to run it for 6 months. That means Nigeria will spend an extra 11 point something, over 11 trillion naira. And then to wait it out till December, that's about 13 trillion naira, which is quite humongous. And we risk not having any infrastructural budget in 2023 fiscal framework, which is quite sad. Because to me, the ways of phasing out this fuel subsidy should be done in various ways. You have 11 trillion naira to spend on fuel subsidy in just the first half of 2023. why don't you use some part of it to maybe up the minimum wage of civil servants or generally workers in Nigeria? Then the other aspect, focus on infrastructure as well. If you have regular power, nobody will complain of buying so much diesel, of course. Look at the price of diesel currently. Nobody will complain on that. So if I have regular power, my business will run smoothly. I spend less on diesel or PMS.
Yes.
So which means I'm even saving more. So they should divert the money into, what's it called? First of all, increasing minimum wage. That is one of the ways to alleviate the issue. If I'm earning more, and even if, so long as my income can meet my expenditure, I wouldn't complain.
Sure.
It is when my purchasing power is kind of less than what I normally get. That's where the problem is.
So you have categorically stated it. I don't think I need to say more. Let's end fuel subsidy
We should end it.
and make living standards better for
and to know that we are planning to go borrowing again, and part of it might be for subsidy, is kind of funny. And it's a threat to our economy because it is not helping us.
Many have opined, though, that borrowing itself, is not the challenge.
No, don't get it wrong.
Yes.
All good businesses at one point go into borrowing. Check the record. At one point they go into borrowing. Borrowing is not a bad thing, but two things you must ask: what is it being used for? Are you using it? Is it for a productive use? Because if you borrow and put it into use, the money you borrow should be able to generate the return for you to pay back. Not borrowing and then you gulp it and you go and borrow to pay what you've borrowed and all that is.
Okay, the discussion for debt, we will leave that for another day. Thank you so much. Engineer Shadrach Ogiriki, Acting Head of Department at the Petroleum and Gas Engineering Base University. Thank you for coming on the program.
My pleasure.
And we hope to continue this conversation as with more developments coming from the oil and gas sector. Now, like he has rightly stated, so much we have taken away from today's program. And on his ending note, end fuel subsidy and make the living standards of Nigerians better. We will bring you developments from the OPEC Plus meeting that is expected to kickstart today on Business Daily. We'll bring you whatever the resolutions are from that meeting and also have more experts come in and speak to how the oil and gas sector can become better in the country. Don't forget, you can catch up on all you need to know in the world of business on all our social media handles, on Facebook, Instagram and on YouTube, Trust TV News. You get all you need to know in the world of business and news updates as they come in. My name is Christiana Amodu Otinya. Thank you for always keeping a date and investing your time with us. Continue to stay safe.